Hey guys, so a couple of things I want to clarify. I think there's been some confusion about how to use the grammar curriculum. Two things. First of all, the way you do the grammar curriculum is the student does the placement test, and whatever they get on the placement test, wherever they start inside that placement test, from that point forward, they have to do every single other worksheet. So if you see any gaps in their report, somebody did something wrong, and we don't need to place any blame, it's not a big deal, but you gotta take the ownership of fixing that, right? So there cannot be any gaps. If you think that you should be doing something like creating a gap in the report, you're wrong, don't do that, okay? So anytime that comes up, like in any situation, just don't skip around. There is no skipping around in the grammar curriculum. The only time skipping around is theoretically even doable is if the student is using the grammar curriculum as responsive for reading, okay? Not like responsive for grammar, because if it's, if a student starts at W7, but then all of a sudden they don't know something instead of W3, that means that their new starting place inside the curriculum is W3. And from that moment forward, they're going to do W3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7, and then they can continue moving on. There's no skipping around like that, right? It's not like, oh, let's just drop back to 3, and then we'll come back to 7. No, that's not how it works. Every single thing, from the lowest thing that the student does not understand, all the way up through the very entire end of the entire curriculum, including the final boss battle, every single thing must be completed from the lowest all the way up to the end. Okay. That's the first thing. Second thing is, I have made this a little bit easier for you guys, and I built this stuff into the system already, this TMC. So at the end of every worksheet, the VMH will ask you, was the student doing this worksheet because they're doing the Grammar Basics curriculum, or because it was responsive? Now, obviously, if they're doing the Grammar Basics curriculum, that button is always going to just take you to the next worksheet. So you've got that in there, and that's really easy. However, if the student was doing it as a responsive, it'll totally wildly vary sometimes, right? So this first worksheet, if we look at the entire curriculum, is nouns and verbs. Then down here at W6, we have intermediate nouns and verbs. So what I wanted it to be is that if a student needs to drop down to review nouns and verbs, they do both parts. Which means when you click responsive, it's going to take them to part 2 of W6.1, which is W6.1, right? So they're going to do nouns and verbs and then also intermediate nouns and verbs. Now, you don't have to remember that because I built that into the system, but you have to use the system correctly, right? Now, then, if we get on down to W6, we see if they're doing grammar basics, obviously they go to W7. If it's a responsive, it will tell you you can now continue to the next necessary responsive or back to the main worksheet. So whatever you were doing before, now you can go back to it. Does that count inside of the grammar curriculum? No. If they're doing the grammar curriculum, now you have to make sure that everything from W6 on up is done. W6, W7, W8, W9. Every single worksheet from W6 on down to W32 or whatever it is, every single one of those has to be done. But if you were in reading, now you can go back to reading. Okay, that's the idea. So this is all built into the system for you. If it sends you, okay, so if you click on this and you click responsive and it sends you to another grammar worksheet, that means you have to do that grammar worksheet. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? I said, and you have to do it. The student has to do it. I don't care if the student doesn't want to do it. I don't care if you don't want to do it. It doesn't make any difference. Everybody has to do it. That's what happens. Then when it says you can continue to the next, necessary, if you have other responses you want to do or back to the main worksheet, that's fine. Okay. Every single worksheet has this, so to show you a couple of other ones. W2 is adjectives intro. What I wanted that to do is continue on to adjective noun pairs, right? Because that's kind of the part 2 of that one. So it goes on to just W3. Then when you get to W3, that one says, okay, you can continue to the next necessary responsive or back to the main worksheet, right? It's all in there for you. You don't have to know any of this information. I built it this way to do exactly what I need it to do for the student. You just have to follow the rules. So when you see this button, don't go around just not answering the button. You have to click the button and you have to do whatever the button says. That's what we do. All right? That's good. Okay. Yeah, cool. So that's all. Thank you guys for taking that on, doing it, and let me know if you have any questions.